Alrighty. Welcome back to Nick Lenz Doctor Who Review, episode number 30. Yeah, I know it's been about almost 2 weeks since my last review. Well, it took a while to finally get a chance to get this one in and basically get a chance to fully watch it. It took me a while because I had to be interrupted by various different things. But now I finally got this done. Now, what Doctor Who story am I talking about? It's from the Tom Baker era. From the start of his 4th season of the show, which is also the 16th season of the show. This is also the 98th story ever produced by Doctor Who. This is the Ribos operation. Yes, this is also the start of the Key to Time saga. Yes, the first of 6 stories that tell the Key to Time. And from what I can tell, this is the 2nd ever continuous story arc in the Tom Baker run. We will not have this again until when he wrapped up his run. Basically, his last two stories he did, The Keeper Traken, Legopolis, and of course led it to Cash of Alpha. That was basically a 3-parter right there. Excuse me, there's also the Espace Trilogy 2, basically about 2-3-part story, 2-part sagas. This is the first one since the continuous one that started off this run. Well, you could say it started with Planet Spiders. That's what I think it started. It started with there, and it concluded with Terror of the Zygons, because after that we went to standalone stories for quite a while. Now, I should point out, though, the Doctor's got a new companion in the story. We have technically the debut of 3 characters in the story, plus an item. Yes. The first obvious character is the original Romana, played by the late Mary Tamm, who I gotta say, at the time, very beautiful woman. No denying that. I'm sure even Tom Baker would agree she's a very beautiful woman. Bit arrogant per se, but she's quite young. I think she's even younger than Tom Baker. I think Tom Baker at the time, he may have been in his 40s when he first took the role. I mean, Mary Tamm looks like she's presumably in her mid to late 20s, I'd say, at the time. Yes. This story is also the debut of another character too, K9. Well, K9 Mark II. Yes, though there was a box, basically, it was Mark K. Mark II at the end of the previous story, The Invasion of Time, which I will eventually review that one because I love that story. Now, that one featured the return of the Centaurans, and it was the last appearance of the Centaurans on Doctor Who until 2 Doctors. Now, in the case of this one, is there any brand new recurring alien problem this one? Yes, there is one, the White Guardian, who after this story does not appear again until the conclusion of the Black Guardian trilogy. No, I'm not kidding about that. Yeah, that's when he returns. The story is called Enlightenment. Yes, that is the next time he physically appears after this. 4 years later. Actually, it was more like 5 years later. Yeah, 5 years later. It was part of the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who. That was the simple purpose of his return. So they brought him back, and to my knowledge, that was his only appearance he ever made ever in Doctor Who. Now, as I read, I believe it's the same actor who played the Black Guardian. All his appearances played with the same guy, though he's a little bit older per se, but mostly put, yes, the actual same actor. If you wonder what the Key to Time is, they explain in the story it's a way to basically change some purposes of time per se. Yes. That simple piece of it, that simple part of it per se. Yes. Now, about herself as a character, the Ribos operation is technically her first appearance, but she would actually leave toward the end of Tom Baker's run. This was, of course, after she got replaced with a different actress. Yes, that's when she got replaced by Leela Ward. Now, as for why in the world the actress got replaced, that's a really good question, because I do not know the reason for it. Now, her last appearance, well, the second Romana, with the time basic Romana herself, actually people like it per se, that wasn't stock footage like it was in 5 Doctors. Her last physical appearance was in The Warrior's Gate. That was the conclusion to the Espace Trilogy. Yes, that was the conclusion of a story arc. The Espace Trilogy, which later led into the 3-parter, which led into the rebirth of Tom Baker. Yep. That's kind of weird, though. It's like that. You kind of start with Tom Baker's last season with 2 standalone stories, then a 3-parter, and then basically you conclude kind of with a 3-parter too, with the last 2 stories. And you start the first season with a conclusion of that parter. Yes, that's simply the purpose of it. Now, in the case of this episode, now, things starts off with the doctor basically just talking to K9, finish him up. Everything's a hunky-dory. And then the TARDIS is summoned to a strange planet, unidentified in the story. Yes, they never identify what planet this is. And then we see a guy in a chair, in a wooden oval chair. Kind of like a upper mushroom chair. This is the White Guardian making his first appearance in the series. Yes. Now, let me take a look here about the actor who portrayed him. Here he's referred to as the Guardian, but it's later credited as the White Guardian. Yes. Now, you might be thinking, did this guy return to play the same guy in Enlightenment? Yep. Same actor. They did not change the actor. It's still the same actor. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, per se. The fact that both him and the Black Guardian played the same actor. Yes, I found that to be really interesting. Because the Black Guardian appeared a lot more on screen than the White Guardian ever did. White Guardian appeared twice, while the Black Guardian appeared 4 frickin' times. Yes, though there is a 5-year airing time between this story and Enlightenment. 5 years. I'm like, wow. Though this story does the first mention of the Black Guardian, which you won't see him until the Armageddon Factor. That's pretty much where you see him. Now, the first place they're going, of course, their pre-current coordinates, they're going to planet Ribos. Also, the White Guardian tells the Doctor, you're getting a new assistant. But I have K9. You have to deal with it. So he goes to TARDIS, and then he meets Romana, the beautiful Mary Tam. I think she's beautiful. Very beautiful woman. Yes. I say late because she passed away. She passed away 10 years ago. Yep, 10 years ago. And you're thinking, really? 10 years? Well, actually, this year marks 10 years since she passed away. Yes, as for why in the world, basically, she decided to... Okay, so she didn't like the way the character was written, so that's the reason why she left the show. Obviously. Yes. Now, she was born in 1950. Oh, I was definitely right. She was definitely in her late 20s. So, at the time when the story first aired, she was 28 years old. And she had only been in the acting business for 8 years. Yes, by the time she posed Tom Baker. Tom Baker, on the other hand, yeah, he was in his 40s. He was basically 40 years old when he first took the role of Doctor. He left when he was pushing 50. He left in 1981, which was about... he was about 47 when he basically when he left being a doctor. For what I read, the reason why he left, because he felt it was time for him to go. That was simply the reason for it. Though, of course, during his last year on the show, he did marry his companion at the time, Leela Ward. Now, I have nothing against the actors. I have nothing against Leela Ward. I mean, at the time, she was a not bad-looking actress at the time. And here, I'm looking at a picture of her from about 7 years ago. Still looks not that bad. Especially since currently she's 70. Yes. She was married to a guy named Richard Dawkins. Yep. That's who she was married to, but they're currently separated. They've been separated now for about 5 years. Yes. Yes. Now, so, they go to Planet Ribos. Also, I should put something about her attire. A lot of the time she would wear this white outfit. Here in the story, she would wear a very fluffy white coat. A coat the Doctor gave her in the story which she would never wear again because they actually will go to more warmer planets. Ribos is a cold planet. Well, they do describe it as sort of in the cold seas because they describe the planet where for a certain period of time that the planet is far from the sun. Excuse me. And the natives of the planet are described as primitive. Now, the plot of the story, aside from the fact that we have the key time stuff, that's a barely small factor in the story per se, which is fine. You gotta get that, okay, but you gotta have a story surrounding it, alright? So, the story is simply this. We have a guy who is simply a con man trying to sell a planet that has a non-existent mine for this element known as jethrite. That's what they call it in the show. It's this blue stone. And the way to describe it is that it apparently has the power to basically make ships in this series to go to warp. Yep. This crystal is the Doctor Who equivalent of the lithium crystals. Well, it's a similar concept per se. And it allows ships to go faster than the speed of light. So, similar concept, but completely unrelated to each other. Yes, Star Trek tends to borrow some stuff from Doctor Who per se. Take, for example, the Cybermen, for example. Which, of course, basically that some people say that the Borg from Star Trek are rip-offs of the Cybermen. I should point something out about that. Melissa Sugrass, who actually created the Borg, that never came to mind. That never came to mind at the time when they created the Borg. Because she's a sci-fi writer. So she wanted to create good sci-fi aliens. The Borg are really cool aliens. And people tend to point out about that. But Melissa Sugrass basically said, never came to mind. So, aside from the fact that very similar species, they're completely unrelated. Oddly enough, for some reason, I'm not really sure why this is for Tom Baker. It seems that right after Centaurus made the last appearance in the class in this time period when Tom Baker was in the show, it wasn't until toward the end of this era that we had returned the Master. But the Daleks only appeared twice. The Cybermen once. To never appear again until they pop up during Earthshock, which was during Peter Davison's first of the show. So, the guy basically who's kind of the technically main villain, it's this guy right here. The Graph, as they refer to him as. They, according to the guy who is the con man, he knew about him. They describe him as Graph Van Decay. That's basically the guy's name. Now, Garon is simply the con man. Now, Graph himself is a nobleman who used to be the king of an empire of planets. Now, why is he no longer the king, per se? He basically had his brother assume the role temporarily while he goes out to fight in the wars. And when he returned home, his people basically rejected him. So, he wanted to raise up his plan is simply this. Raise a fleet to take it back as home. That's simple reason for it. And according to Garon, he described him as a tyrant, where people hated him so much. And apparently, he tried to contact the Alliance about this, and they rejected his appeal. So, he's seeking money. Now, unlike in Star Trek, where the Federation there is no money, in the future, there clearly is money. It's a different franchise. So, with the exception of Star Trek, a lot of the time, basically, sci-fi tends to pick humanity still having money in the future. Even though in Star Trek, they move beyond that, despite the fact that people who actually produce them are really greedy. Paramount charging nearly $100 when they first released Star Trek Next Generation on DVD. No joke, that's how much they seriously wanted to charge people for the complete series. $100 for this damn thing. And when Walmart had it, they put like this security thing around it to make people don't steal it. That's all for you. So, Garon decided to have his system basically just go into sort of like this cave area sneak into this room that has his jewels. What was the purpose? Like, was it a rule of the planet? Never revealed. They describe the religion of the planet in the episode, where apparently the people of the planet think the planet is a battlefield with the gods, even though literally it's a planet. And they also believe the planet is flat. Wow. Flat earthers. Wow, that's quite something, the fact that it's like that. Yeah. They also have a witch episode called The Seeker. Just a crazy old woman. Yeah. Who Graf himself kills in the final story. Yeah, by the way, this is a 4-parter. Yes, it's a 4-parter. It's a very interesting 4-parter. It just basically, even though you can describe it as an episode of the week, but there's not much canon per se, explore with the Doctor per se, but the key to time itself, we don't see what it looks like until the very end. Yep. So the whole thing is getting hands on this piece of rock. So they put it in the treasure room and eventually gets taken. And the other is the Graf found out about, the Jethrites is because of a 50-year-old geological survey that his assistant happened to have. Yes. He just happened to find it. And he also, and of course, Garon, who says he was part of this corporation to sell the planet, like, oh, we like a deposit. Like, a deposit? How much? 2 million. I don't care that much cash on me. Okay, because you're a prince. How about 1 million? And he's like, that's reasonable. Go fetch the gold from their spaceship. Yes, buy the spaceship. Which, by the way, by the end of this parter, Garon and his sister are the only people aside from the Doctor, Ramon, and Kane are still left alive because everyone else got killed off in the story. Like, pretty much everybody died. Yes, that's typical for some Tom Baker stories where, like, everybody dies. Heck, this even happened in the Peter Davison story. All the characters pop up in the story all die. Yeah, 1 or 2 times. I will eventually talk about those stories, which are the Warriors of the Deep and the Horror of Fang Rock, where all the characters for this story all die. Yes. So, they play a little hot potato with a thing toward the very end of the story, and where the guy who is, well, one of the guards is so... The way they dress these people is kind of like they're Mongols. Yes. Yeah, and yes. So, when the guy finds out about the fact that the guy lied about the mine, he pretty much tried to have him get killed because they're across the Grafenicay. Yes, the guy keeps saying his name a lot in the episode. And they refer to him as a prince because he used to be a king. Yes. Oddly enough, they never mentioned if he had a wife. Nope. They never mentioned that he could be a bachelor. Which is something the story that doesn't really go into very much at all. It just, and by the way, they have this creature pop in the episode where it's weary. Like, the way it looks okay at best. Though a hidden creature on a planet where it's very much, the people are very sensitive to outsiders. Like, you're about thinking, this story almost sounds very familiar. Sounds like the monster Paladin and the cursed Paladin would have a mythological monster on the planet. Here it's very similar, except this monster is not a major plot point like it was in that one. Yep. The story itself is a pretty good start to King of Time, per se. I'm going to give the story roughly a 8 out of 10. The special effects are not bad, per se. It's very... You can just, even though it's sort of a low budget type of thing, there's not much special effects per se. It's not an action piece per se. The only kind of special effects you get is basically the guns they have in this episode. They look like freaking torches that fire lasers. And by the way, at the end of the story, they mention since the Graf is dead, Garon's like, hey, he's dead. We'll take a spaceship and leave the planet. And they say it has 18 years worth of loot in it. But we also have the Graf, which they don't have, and of course, then the Doctor hands the... Oh, by the way, they have this device known as the Time Detector. What this device does is search for the piece of the key of time. And when they have things touch this Jethrites, it transforms into the key of time, which looks like this. Yep, the first of 6 parts of the key of the time. Yes. And I gotta admit, the prop itself looks beautiful. It's like you could say they spent a lot of money on this thing. Like, wow, this thing looks freaking gorgeous. It does look cheap. It does look terrible. So good job on people who produced this episode, or at least the prop makers. That looks freaking gorgeous. It looks like it may have glass per se, it could be a plastic, but appearance-wise, it looks good. Surprisingly, the object holds up really well 40 years later. Well, 44 years later, mind you. Yep. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for this particular review. Next is going to be Comic Corner and then Boruto. Okay, next video. Bye.